very important. And again, this speaks to the concept of chassis roll and why you'd have certain heights of chassis at the four corners. You measure it on your frame rail right here at the front corner, and that's roughly, you know, it's going to be 4 7/8 to 5, somewhere around there is a recommendation. I run mine a little higher than what Pro Chassis, so we'll say this is 4 7/8. We can do the same thing on the other side of the car. That's going to be our lowest corner on the car, 4 7/8. This one should be around 5, maybe a little higher. I set my chassis up just a little higher because I'm heavier. So 4 7/8, 5, 5 1/4, 5 1/2. The reason why your right rear is highest is because, again, going through the turns, you want the chassis roll is going to put pressure on this corner to lower it, and now hopefully your car is still flat going through the turn. Flat in terms of equal pressure on all four corners going through the turn, and level. That's why we go 4 7/8, 5, 5 1/4, and 5 1/2. All right, so groovy. We're cooking with grease here. We've got our fluids, our air temperatures, understanding of shocks and springs of what you want to run, and ride heights. Now we're kind of going to move toward the front of the car, where we want to look at our caster, camber, and toe out. Toe out will be the last thing that we adjust. We want to do caster and camber first before we do toe out, because caster and camber, getting that right, will mess up your toe out. But adjusting your toe out won't mess up the caster and camber. So that's why you do it last. Camber. Camber is the tilt of your front wheels to the infield. So this one tilting this way, and that one tilting that way. Again, the reason why you tilt them that way is so when you go through the turns, they're hopefully straight up and down and getting full use of the tire patch on the track. So this one we want at 3 3/4 degrees tilt this way, and that one 1 3/4 degree tilt there. And the way we measure that is a caster camber gauge. And we all have dust caps on ours, and I'm kind of lucky I have a square dust cap, so I don't have to take that dust cap off to be able to put this on flat. And we've got some bubbles here that we've got to sync up. But for camber, which we want this bubble to be in the middle, and in camber will be red here. And this one's actually at 3 1/2, which is a little more than what you normally would have, but I tend to like it that way. It's about 2 degrees more than the spec. So that's what that is. And then the other one wheel, we would do the same thing. So before we would adjust camber to get it right, we want to see where our caster is. And caster is the tilt of our spindle. The spindle here is the tilt back. We want 6-degree tilt back from straight up on this side, and 8-degree tilt back of the spindle on the right front. And that helps us really turn the car if you have that 2-degree split in caster. So, but before I would mess around with my camber to get it right, I want to see where I'm at on caster. And the way to do caster is you turn the car all the way to the left. We got to get the caster bubble lined up. On the 0, you can see the 0 right there. And get this one lined up on there. Okay. Get this one. All right. And as I turn this, this bubble will start moving this way. And we want to turn it all the way the other way. You see the bubble moving? Okay. And what's that reading there? About 7.5, a little 7. So I got a little more camber and a little more caster than what spec says. So what would we do to fix that or to change it? I will just describe what we would do. I'm not actually going to get the wrenches out in that, but it's really simple. What we said is my wheel is tilted too much this way by a couple degrees, and this was actually tilted back a degree more than I normally would have it, because it was at 7 and it should be at 6. So I need to tilt the spindle this way, as well as suck the tire over this way a little bit. So if I lengthen this bar, that'll push this forward, but unfortunately it will also push this top of the tire out. So just adjusting that isn't going to work. So I need to, here's what I would do. If I move this bar down, or this clamp down, it's going to pull the top of the tire over, as well as pull this spindle back a little bit. So this must have slid up a little bit, and reason why is I'm off a little bit. So if I push that down, it'll move this over and pull this forward, and I solved 2 birds with 1 stone by making that one adjustment, and then I'd put my gauges on there to make sure it's right. So let's just assume we did that, and I'm all okay over there. Repeat that whole process on that side of the car, and that's my camber and caster measurement. So now my caster and camber's groovy, my ride heights are groovy, fluid levels, tire pressures, they're all groovy. Let's do the last thing before scaling. That is the toe out. And this is a handy dandy toe out bar that John Woolsey can make for you. This measures the toe out of the tires, and that is how the front tires, to what degree are they towed out like this. We want them towed out 1/8 to 1/4 inch. On a smaller tight track, you'd go 1/4 inch. On a bigger, wider turn track, 1/8 inch. You definitely don't want to be towed in, because that's called plowing, and that doesn't work well going down a straight. You want it towed out just a little bit, because it hugs the track and gives you extra stability and grip. So what you do is we got this nice little thing here. John's going to help me there. We measure those 2 first. Okay, so that's our outside width. Now we throw this under the car and measure the same measurement on the back edge of the tire. And I am straight up. I have no toe out. So that's not good. So what would we do to correct that? That's a real easy change here. You get a 3/4 inch wrench, and you loosen this jam nut, you loosen this jam nut, and you just take your hand and you rotate this bar. This is your tie rod, and this will move the tires out or in, and then you remeasure and get it to an 1/8 to 1/4 inch. You want to make sure you don't leave too many threads exposed here on these heims. As you can see here, I have no threads exposed, so I'm not worried about that. So the number of threads being exposed on your heims is a decision you might decide to make the adjustment on one side or the other, because obviously you don't want to run out of threads and then create a weak point in your heim in your tie rod. So I don't have that problem on this car. I just need to push these 2 out a little bit, just a little bit, because I'm straight up right now. This is one thing that's pretty important. I set this car up a week ago to spec, and yeah, yesterday I was out running pretty hard on our practice facility, and it goes to show you that it can change just in one-day race without getting hit or getting in a wreck or anything. It can change. So you don't do a setup at the beginning of the year and expect it to stay the whole year. You want to take over these measurements before every race, because they will go out of whack. And through a day of probably about 50 laps on our practice facility, my toe out changed and my caster and camber changed. So a little lesson there. All right, we're going to go to commercial break here so we can set up our scales. Colorado Dwarf cars, before we do our scaling, I'd like to say that we welcome you to come out and at the races and stop in the pits and ask questions. We're a friendly group. We'll ask you to get in our car and you can sit in there, and yes, you'll be able to get back out. A lot of people say, oh, I will never get back out, and say, yeah, you will. And it's like a shoe that is a half size too small. You can get it on, but it's snug. That's what these Dwarf cars are. They're 5/8 scale of the old 1928 to 48 coupes and sedans. And they're a hoot to run. We run on motorcycle engines and fully adjustable suspensions. We have a higher horsepower to weight ratio than NASCAR. These are rockets on wheels, and just a ton of fun. And we welcome you at Colorado Dwarf Cars to come out and visit us. We've got a practice facility at John Woolsey Speedway, and you can get as many laps as you want on there. We have club events, and in fact today is our Thanksgiving Thrill Ride 2, where we're having this chassis seminar, and then we're going to have practice sessions, heat races, time-in trials, and for the first time we're going to have a figure-8 time trial race on our practice facility. So we're looking forward to that. So I'll sign off now till I can get the stuff set up for our scaling, and I'll be back in a minute.